morning. My name is Amanda Tokos, and I am currently a franchise consultant and broker, and I'm partnered with a national franchise consulting portfolio called the Franchise Consulting Company. And I kind of got into this group honestly because I had just sold my 4 businesses. I was a franchisee myself for about 10 years, had about 100 employees at 4 different locations. The company was called Massage Envy. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but we did massages and facials. No, I'm not a massage therapist. I don't know anything about that other than I like to get them and have a lot of respect for the people in that field that have gone to school. Before Massage Envy, though, I actually was in law enforcement for 16 years. I was a federal probation officer for about 9 years, so I worked with all different kinds of people, trying to help them change their lives for the better. And before that, I worked with the state, also in probation. But I graduated from Northrop High School. I am a Fort Wayne native. Quite frankly, it's maybe even a bit surprising to some of those who know me when I was a kid that I'm sitting here today telling you about what I've done, because I grew up in a family where no one had been to college. We didn't have a lot of money, but I had everything that I needed. And I always wanted to go to college. I didn't know why, I just knew I wanted to do something a little bit more than what my family had done in the past. I really didn't have a lot of boundaries as a kid. I was raised by my dad. So I think maybe that was a little bit good because it allowed me to go out and experiment and do things. I was, pet sitting and sweeping driveways for money and shoveling, snow, and I was painting rocks and selling them, and my own little makeshift garage sales and babysitting and you name it. I mean, any way that I could come up with a business plan, and I would create flyers and go door to door, which is dangerous today. So. Don't do that necessarily without your parents' permission. But, I think through that I learned that I could do things, and I became kind of an achiever and a cheerleader for myself to go out there and do things. And so I wasn't quite sure how I was going to get to college since we didn't have a lot of money. I know there's a lot of ways that you can get there today with different college loans and scholarships. But I actually was fortunate to get into a program called the Groups Program. And that allowed me to go to college kind of on a trial basis. I had to get down there and do a good job. And fortunately for the majority of my school years, I did really well in school. High school kind of went down a little bit. I think there are a lot of students that maybe they're having personal problems or family problems and their grades would suffer. Do your best to get it back up. I know it's hard. I worked while I was in high school. My mom was sick, so I could have had a lot of excuses to give up and not do a good job, but I knew ultimately that doing well in school was going to be important for me to get into college, and so I really ramped it up the last year and a half and got it to where it needed to be so I could get into that Groups Program. And then when I did get down to Indiana University during that summer, I did get a 4.0. I took it very serious and did everything I could to get good grades so I could go on to my freshman year. But fast forward, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I loved people. I knew I wanted to help people. I wanted to help people, that maybe were in similar situations like me, get out of them and believe that they could do better. So child psychology became a big interest for me. And then you have all these people telling you, well, if you're going to do that, then you've got to go to school for 8 years, and you've got to do this, and it's just overwhelming, when you're young, because you really don't know what you don't know. So my advice to you would be is, it's great to get other people's input, but also it's important to also follow what seems natural for you, because ultimately you don't have to have that exact job picked out. You've really got to identify what are your strengths as a person. Some people are introverted. They don't want to be around a lot of people, so there are going to be fields that you can go into that are going to be good for that personality type that you're comfortable in, and you don't have to pick the exact job yet because there's so many options out there. But if you're a people person, sitting behind a desk in a little room all day is probably not going to be the best job for you. And I was a people person, and I like to interact, and I like to help people. So, those kinds of personalities are great oftentimes in teaching and counseling and law enforcement. But there was also a side of me that if you told me I couldn't do something, then I kind of wanted to do it. I like to prove people wrong because I'd already done it a couple times. So that feeling of accomplishing something that maybe you didn't think you could do or someone else didn't think you could do, it's so motivating and when you do that, make sure that you embrace that feeling and continue to write on it, because that will help sustain and move you into the next thing, because life is full of lots of ups and downs, and we can plan for a lot of things, and there are a lot of things I plan for that happen, but then there's a lot of things that you can't plan for, so you have to be resilient. When something happens, gets in your way, whether it's an obstacle, hurdle, whatever you want to call it, good, bad, or indifferent, sometimes our lives will take a different direction. Embrace it, take all that knowledge that you've gained, and just move it forward, because whatever that next opportunity is may be leading you closer to your dream. So for me, like I said, I always wanted to do more. I always envisioned myself owning my own business. I didn't really know what that was. You couldn't have asked me at 18 years old what that was. I just knew I wanted to do more, and I always kind of carried that with me, that passion, and every job that I took, I did everything at 110%. So if my job was to, make French fries and run the cash register and clean the bathrooms, I did those, and I did them really well, but then I also did more. I always wanted to stand out, and I always wanted to challenge myself, and people noticed that. And that also helps in terms of self-confidence. When you know you can go above and beyond what somebody expects of you, well, then maybe you can do some things on your own. Maybe you don't need to necessarily work for someone, but you just don't wake up and say, I want to own a business, and you own a business. You kind of have to earn it. You kind of have to have the street cred. You've got to go through the process and be the employee. So you know what that looks like on the other side. You know how to treat people. It's really important if you're going to go into business. It's not just about making money. You're also building a business for your community, and you have people working for you. Unless, of course, it's just you. But ultimately, you have customers. So those things are always important when you're thinking about a business. As I moved through my career and it took different turns, and I was working in criminal justice, I kept thinking. Well, actually, I had got into criminal justice quite young. I had graduated from college, and that got me my county probation job. But when I got in there, of course, I went above and beyond, and I joined committees, and I tried to change, policies and come up with better programs. I was always challenging, not in a bad way, but I just wanted to do more. And I learned about federal probation, and that just seemed super exciting, and I applied, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't do the greatest job. I didn't get my application in early. I didn't do a lot of homework. I probably didn't spend that much time on the application. And so if I'm not going to take myself serious, then why should anybody else? So I knew I didn't do a good job. I had to be honest with myself. I didn't get a call for the interview. And, but that didn't stop me. So I decided to go straight to the source. And that's something that I still do to this day. I called up a local federal probation officer, and I invited him out for lunch, and he was happy to meet with me, and I asked him a lot of questions. And one thing I did learn is I was going to need to work on my master's degree to even be considered, which seemed like a lot more money, a lot more time, but I did that because I set a goal, and I knew what I needed to have happen in order to achieve that. And I took it very serious, and I worked full-time while still paying off my undergrad loans for college, and I went to a master's program in the evening, and finally finished that. But actually, before I even finished it, there was another opportunity to apply with feds, and I did. And I was one of the first people here in our local community to get hired with the federal department here. So that was kind of a new thing that they were doing, and I got in at a very young age, at 30. So technically, I could have retired at 50, which I know to you guys seems like really old, but I'm 48, so that still seems really young to me. So imagining if I was retiring in 2 years, it seems crazy to me. But that was the plan. The like I said, sometimes you make plans and things don't always go that way. And I remember I told you I had that thing in the back of my head. I always wanted to own my own business. But I was thinking, okay, I'm going to retire at 50 and I'm going to go to a remote island and start up like a coffee tiki hut with desserts. Well, that didn't happen, sorry to say. Still could. I still have time. We will live to be 103, I'm not kidding. You watch. And then, so my degree, by the way, was in business management. So that really didn't go along the lines with criminal justice, right? I will say they didn't have a whole lot of programs at the college I went to at the time for evening. However, when I decided to take that course, I took it with the idea that, hey, someday I need a plan B, because if I retire at 50, that's pretty young. And that didn't mean that I could necessarily start collecting on retirement. It's not how it works. I'm sure you guys will learn that in JA. But I needed to have a plan B to get me from 50 to 103. But way before plan B, I happened to be in Chicago. And while I was there, I kept hearing about Massage Envy. And if you remember earlier, I said I own Massage Envy. And I was actually really intrigued about the place. I saw it in commercials. I saw it in some printed stuff. I saw it on a billboard on the way there. So that's all marketing, right? And so that repetitive marketing got to me because it made me curious. And I had some downtime in the hotel room. I was there for a conference and I started Googling it. I was interested in that, right? And I learned that it was a franchise. And I thought, well, gosh, that would be really nice if there was one in Fort Wayne. And of course I researched and there weren't. There was 5 in Indianapolis. And I think there was maybe 500 and some nationwide at the time. So I left Chicago, and actually it was around the time I found out I was going to have my first and only daughter. So it was a very exciting time in my life. But throughout those months of waiting for the arrival of my daughter, I would periodically get curious and start Googling again and learning more. And I realized that my interest wasn't even so much about the consumer, the product, which I did believe. I thought they had a really neat product, not just the massage and the facials, but they had a membership program, kind of like gyms. And no one in the industry in massage had ever done that before. So they were really a pioneer in the franchise world, which hopefully you guys get to learn a little bit about the difference between franchises and then your typical business, but both great opportunities for entrepreneurship. Anyways, so I became more and more interested on that level of, hey, maybe I could own my own business. And then, well, if they can do that, why can't I do it? Why can I not do it? Well, I can do it. But I thought, well, I've got to wait till I retire. But what happened when I came home after having my daughter, and this God's honest truth, I checked the mail and there was a postcard, and it was from the regional developer for Massage Envy in the state of Indiana, and she was coming to Fort Wayne to talk about expanding the franchise Massage Envy in Fort Wayne. And I looked at the date. It was like the next day. So I took my 3 or 4 day old baby to her presentation here in Fort Wayne, and I knew right then, it just lit a fire in me, and I thought, the stars have aligned. I can do this. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't. Just like I didn't have all the answers when I was in high school and thought I knew I wanted to go to college, or when I was in college and I knew I wanted to help people. I didn't know all the answers. And I think that's important. I think if you're interested in something, you're passionate about something, you need to seek out information. You need to seek out people who've been there. But you're not always going to have all the answers. If we had all of that, we could look in a little crystal ball and have the assurance that everything was going to work out exactly how we planned. I mean, life would be kind of boring, but we don't. We really don't have that. And so, but it lit this fire. And so what did I do? Knowledge is power. I'd already done lots of research, but I wanted to go talk to people who already own Massage Envies. So those 5 Massage Envies in Indianapolis, I went there and I met with every single owner. I went into their businesses, and I heard the good, the bad, and the ugly. Business is not easy. It takes a special kind of person to do business. Doesn't mean you have to have lots of money. Eventually you need to have money to invest in a business, but not all businesses require that. You don't have to be the smartest person in the world. You do need to be pretty smart though. You got to have good decision skills, good critical thinking. But you know, if there's a will, there's a way, and when you figure out what that way is, that will perpetuate the rest of it. You'll start to put things in place, building blocks to get there. It may not happen overnight. But that's what I started to do. Okay, so now that I've decided I wanted to own this business, what do I need to do to get there? And fortunately, I was at a point in my life where I had worked long enough that I had saved money, that I had retirement. I had, bought a house. We had equity, meaning that we paid on a big portion of that house. Those things created what we call net worth, and I also saved some money, cash. So that's called liquidity. So I was able to use my net worth and my liquidity to apply for a small business loan to actually buy into that franchise. Because for a franchise, you actually buy a license to open up that business. But the license itself, you guys, $45,000, right? You're thinking, oh, $45,000 start up business? You probably think $45,000 is a lot of money. It is. But no, not just $45,000. That was for the license to actually use their name. To actually get the business up and going, it was around $425,000, including that license. And you remember, just because you start up a business, you have costs all the time. My biggest costs were rent and payroll, because I had massage therapists and estheticians and front desk and managers, right? So how do I get that money? I didn't have $425,000. So I had to ask a bank to give me money so I could start up that business. And of course they want me to pay them back, and they're not my friends, so they want me to pay them back with interest. Very nice people, but yeah, they wanted me to pay them back with interest. So they could make money also. And it was a risk for them to give me the money. I had to prove to them that I was going to be able to make money. So I had to show them a business plan. I had to tell them what things I was going to do to make my business successful. I had to do research. One of the nice things about franchising is that the franchise, the original founder, the people who originally created Massage Envy had already done a lot of that homework, and I was able to share that with the bank. So the bank saw that many other Massage Envies across the country had done well. So that really helped. And so I got that loan and opened up my first business. I did not plan on leaving my job, but I did ultimately do it. I believe it was the right decision for me. Sometimes, there are a lot of different business models, some that you can invest in and you can put in minimal time. Most businesses, you're going to have to put in a lot of time. You're really going to have to understand how the business runs. I did not become a massage therapist. I would have had to go to school for that. And if I had done that, I would have been working on my business. But what I did learn was the industry. I learned to respect my massage therapists and my estheticians, and had a desire to understand what it was that they were doing, understand their profession, their expertise, and trust in them as well. But I also had to trust in accountants and attorneys, not so much attorneys, and other entrepreneurs and colleagues and other people that own Massage Envies, and listen to my customers. And honestly, business ownership is kind of like a life of its own. It's like having a child in a way, and I had to kind of grow and learn with my business. I made mistakes, but when you're a business owner, if you're a leader, you cannot let those mistakes get you down, because I got to get up for my employees and my customers every day. You can't let them see you sweat. I'm human though, we all have our days, so it's important to have a strong network and support group, whether it's your friends or other business owners and groups and organizations that you can be a part of. You've got to find a way to constantly feed that fire so that you can have that for your employees and your customers. But my business did quite well, and I was able to then buy 2 more licenses, call me crazy, and open up 2 more businesses. And one of them was actually 2 hours away. So that was a little challenging, but it was another adventure for me. And I was actually working in the business with the first one. The second one, I had to trust other people to run my business. I didn't step completely out, but I had to build a leader within my organization. I had to trust someone else and delegate and allow them to make decisions. Now, did they make every decision perfect like I would have done it? No. But is my way the right way all the way? No. Did they make mistakes? Of course they did, and we learned from them. And I helped develop a leader within my organization. And to my amazement, and what I loved was building those leaders also within my organization and growing the people within, because if you ever want to grow a business or any organization, whether you choose to be an employee or a business owner and you want to be a leader in that business, you've got to learn how to grow your people. And the best way to do that is through servant leadership, showing them how to do that job, not telling them, and then letting them see how you also handle situations and how you cope, because they're watching you. And so I was able to grow that manager as well as many others as I went on to purchase a third license and have a third business, and then acquired a fourth one also in my market. So I had 4 Massage Envies, and I couldn't be there every day. I couldn't be there for every customer. I couldn't be there for every employee. I was definitely there when things were escalating, when I needed to be, but I was mostly overseeing my managers. But I found, that in order for me to grow, I had to trust and still keep an eye, but not micromanaging. It was important that I had key people in those positions, and some people weren't right. Some people I had to let go. There's certain things as a leader you have to do, and if you're not doing those things, then it's probably not the right role for you. But building those leaders was amazing, and what I learned was that putting in the time in my employees was a lot more beneficial than trying to micromanage every customer. And so if I treated my employees well, then they treated my customers well. If I made them feel like they were a part of what I was doing, they owned what they were doing. They were proud of what they were doing. They felt like they were a part of it, and they were, because I couldn't have done it without them. So that was essentially my role through that. But I sold my businesses, and then I was like, now what? I was 46 years old. Now what am I going to do? I couldn't go back into law enforcement. As much as I loved it, I couldn't. And I know this is going to sound crazy, but I'm too old. Because you had to be 37 to get into law enforcement. There's very few careers where there's an age limit like that, but that is one because of the physical requirements. If I had stayed with it, they couldn't have got rid of me. But I left, so I couldn't come back in. So not to say that that was all a waste. I gained a lot of knowledge from working in that field for many years. But I had to do something else. I didn't know what business I was going to go into. I wasn't sure yet. And I started researching, again, putting myself out there, networking, and looking into different opportunities. And I started getting all these calls from consultants and brokers across the country telling me about different franchise opportunities. I used to be a franchisee. I was like a perfect candidate for them, right? But then it occurred to me, well, how'd you get into what you're doing? I thought, wow, I could really do what they're doing. I loved the idea of being able to work with other entrepreneurs or people that had never been in business before, that didn't know how to get into business, because I thought, my gosh, I know how to do it. I know how to tell them to go from a career into owning a business. I understand, I'm not a funding expert, but I understood the different options that they could take. I knew what they needed to do to get themselves there to be able to be a business owner. I knew what it took, day in and day out to build teams. And I understood that excitement, yet fear that a lot of people have when they're considering business ownership. And so I thought, I felt like I could add value in that space. And not only that, while I was in that space, if I partnered with a company that had a lot of franchises in them, like I am now, I could learn about all those different franchises very quickly. It's kind of like having an encyclopedia of franchises and seeing everything from the inside, kind of like being in the back of the kitchen, which put me into an advantage as I personally looking at what's my next business opportunity. I can see inside all of these franchises. I get to meet the founders, the people that originally from boots, ground at level, ground zero, starting with that business, whether it was that first pizza place, and they put, all their money and everything into that business, working 68 hours a week. and then took that vision, that passion, and grew it, and now maybe they have 1,000 units across the country. Those are those people that are out there that you're wondering, oh, how did they get there? Most of them were not born in business. They may come from a family of entrepreneurs, but not always. I didn't. But I bet you my daughter will also want to be an entrepreneur, because I think that kind of fosters that spirit a little bit. But a lot of these people grew up with a passion, with a vision, and they put everything into it. There is some risk in owning your own business, though. It's a little bit different than going and getting a job. And not everyone is comfortable taking as many risks, and that's okay. Not everyone can be a business owner. Not everyone should be a business owner. But there are those of you out there right now probably watching this, and you're feeling a little bit of fire inside. Maybe you are one of those people that should be a business owner. And if not that, a leader. Try being a leader first. I mean, before you go out and you're running a business, you really should get to a point where you are, overseeing some others. Maybe the head of your organization. And again, that's a risk. You've got to put yourself out there, which means you might fail. But I hate the word failure. In fact, I had a hard time saying that word as I was growing up, and I think there was a reason for it, because I don't like it. Because it's when you fall down that you have the greatest opportunity of being successful, by lifting yourself up. Because every single time you do that, it shows you yourself and other people, but most importantly you, that you can do it. You can overcome. And every time you do that, you get stronger and smarter and closer to whatever it is that you want to aspire to be. And you can change that. You can have multiple career paths. Like I said, I'm going to be 103. I have tons of things on my list. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know that I want to do more. I want to write a book. I'd love to do a podcast. I'd love to own another business. I'd love to invent something. Why not? He did it. She did it. I can do